Good evening, everyone. I think we'll get started. I feel so far away from everyone. My name is Mary Grace Lindsay. I am a financial aid counselor at Carroll University. Can everyone hear me okay? Is it too loud or no? Okay. My style is to be more down, talking, having a conversation, but we are going to talk about financial aid tonight, financing that post-secondary education, whether your student is considering two-year school, private school, four-year school, public school. This is a really just general applicable topic. I am from Carroll, but again, this is a general financial aid presentation tonight. We know financial aid is very individual-based as well, so if you have questions throughout the way, you're welcome to to shout them out, but we can also address questions later. You can come and see me at the end if you have anything personal that you'd like to talk about with financial aid. But with further ado, we'll get started. Here's some topics for tonight. We have generally, what is financial aid? We have some acronyms in the financial aid world: cost of attendance, COA, and student aid index. So to define those, a definition of financial need and how it's determined. We'll talk about the categories and types of financial aid, and then we'll get into that FAFSA form. So who's heard of FAFSA? Yeah. And then who in the room too are seniors, senior students or senior parents? Okay. Majority for sure. All right. We'll unpack the FAFSA. It's definitely a hot topic right now and very timely. Okay. Special and unusual circumstances. I have slides at the end of that. So I know this presentation is being available through your resources that you guys can access afterwards as well. There was some note pages, and there's also a reference for scholarships from your school counseling office too. Okay, so what is financial aid? Simply put, funds available to students and families to help with those post-secondary educational expenses. Okay, what are those expenses? So cost of attendance is a combination of direct costs and indirect costs. So we know direct costs are going to be things like tuition, fees, housing, food, things that your college university is going to bill you for. We consider those in the cost of attendance, but we also know that you have those indirect costs, things that you're going to still have to pay for while you're going off to college. So things like books and supplies, you may have transportation expenses, miscellaneous and personal. You still got to buy your shampoo and things like that. So in the financial aid world, we set up budgets. The cost of attendance is a fancy name for a budget, and we have to factor in those direct costs and indirect costs. I guess that being said, before I go forward, so every school you're looking at is obviously going to have a different cost of attendance. They're going to vary. Okay. What's not going to vary is this SAI. SAI is a student aid index. Who's done a FAFSA before? For another student, for yourself? Okay. So prior to last year they did a really big overhaul on the FAFSA form, the free application for federal student aid, and the SAI used to be called EFC. So maybe you've heard that term before, expected family contribution. It's relatively same thing. It's a measure. It's a number resulting from the evaluation of a student's and family's approximate financial resources for post-secondary ed. So it doesn't mean it's what you're gonna pay for college, but it's a measure, standardized formula that's used from the information provided on the FAFSA, federal formula that way. And every school that you list on your FAFSA is going to get your SAI. So that's going to be consistent. So your cost of attendance will vary. Your SAI will stay the same. The SAI is made up of a student contribution and then a parent contribution for dependent students. And you'll hear me use the term dependent students a lot. Most students are going to fall under being dependent for FAFSA purposes. Okay, it's not related to tax filing necessarily, dependency. I think it's different. There are some exceptions where a student may not be dependent, but in most cases, they're going to be dependent, and that means the parent information is required on the FAFSA. So simple math, I like simple math. What is financial need? So it's that cost of attendance that varies minus the SAI. Financial need is what is there. And then it's, just want to make sure I'm hitting all my points here too. So financial need will obviously vary at the different schools. Financial need determines how much and what type of aid that the student may receive. Okay, so what are those types of aid? So we break it up into two main types, gift aid and self-help. Gift aid are grants and scholarships, free money. You don't have to pay those back at all. We want the very most of gift aid, right? So that's really what you want to focus on. But self-help also, that helps with paying for expenses in the form of loans, which are something you have to pay back with interest, and then work, study, employment. So we're working on campus, earning money that you can put towards those educational expenses, whether it's the direct or the indirect expenses. Okay, so all of these things make up financial aid, and we'll go more into detail here too. So aid comes from a variety of sources, federal government, the states, college and university, private sources, so like local community organizations or big national organizations, and then employers. So we're going to break down these sources here. So the largest source of financial aid is the federal government. It's awarded primarily on the basis of financial need. You must apply using the FAFSA. That's how you'd be eligible for a review of federal resources. And eligibility requirements must be met. So to be eligible for federal aid and to be able to do the FAFSA, a student must be a U.S. citizen or permanent or eligible non-citizen, so like permanent resident. Okay. The largest source of aid too is because the government has the federal student loan and federal parent loan program, so that just high volume of dollars that way. They also have the federal Pell Grant program based on financial need. So these are some different categories that the government is providing funding. Okay, then state programs also, by doing a FAFSA, then you're reviewed for particular state programs. These are where residency requirements usually apply. So here in Wisconsin, if you are a Wisconsin resident and you're attending a school in Wisconsin, and based on the FAFSA, you qualify based on the financial need, then you could potentially be eligible for some funding, some free money from the state. There's a Wisconsin grant program. It's aid that is the basis of both merit and need. There are some other programs throughout the state of Wisconsin. They have a website. HEAB is the acronym, HEAB, Higher Education Aids Board. So you could check out their website for other programs. But typically the FAFSA is the way that you're being reviewed for these state programs as well as federal. Okay, and some states have deadlines. We don't have deadlines in Wisconsin, but if you're a Wisconsin resident and you're applying for a school in Illinois, for example, then you would not qualify for a Wisconsin program or Illinois either because you're not an Illinois resident. So, okay, so the colleges and universities, this is one I like to talk about because I work in a college in a financial aid office where we are able to provide a lot of great resources. So you'll want to check in with those financial aid offices, admission web pages of the schools you're looking at, and really see what kind of scholarships they are offering, grants that they are offering. If you have to do anything extra to get them, sometimes you just have to apply to the school and they're going to review you for their own merit-based scholarship. It's not even related to the FAFSA. Maybe you go and visit and they track that and you get a visit grant just by visiting, or there's some kind of maybe alumni connection, or maybe there's more of a competitive scholarship where you have to apply for if you're a science major and submit a teacher letters of recommendation. So you just want to really detail into those websites and see what kind of opportunities they have, what kind of deadlines, and apply for as many things as you can. Colleges and universities are using, maybe offering aid in the form of gift aid, that type that we want the most of. They may also offer self-help. So some may have their own loan programs. We don't at Carroll. But then the work program is big. Many colleges are having like a federal work study or even some internal campus job where it's not funded by the government, it's funded by that university. So you can still work on campus even if you don't qualify need-based from FAFSA. Okay, a lot of colleges and universities they're using your FAFSA to also check to see if you qualify need-based for maybe some other grants that's from the school, not related to academics, but financial needs. So you never know until you do a FAFSA to see what that particular school is going to offer. So I think really that first year, the FAFSA is really key, just to apply and see what comes of that. Okay, many colleges are going to have deadlines that could vary. So this brings me to my little plug to set up some kind of tracker. So you have all your schools listed out. You know when the admission deadlines are, or application deadlines, admission deadlines, different scholarship deadlines. If they have a FAFSA priority date or a FAFSA deadline, and just kind of start getting those timeframes on your radar so you don't miss anything and so you wouldn't potentially lose out on aid. Okay, national programs, some websites, some key ones. You've maybe heard of that. FastWeb is a big one. Certainly more competitive, but there are resources out there. You have to spend the time and energy. Sometimes you can set up an account with like a profile, and then you can get more filtered opportunities at some of these larger sites. So there's that, and then the community and private programs. That's what I really would say spend your time and energy on now as seniors. If there's any juniors or underclassmen in the room, just really checking in with what's local, close to home, and then this resource page that Ms. Knapp provided is helpful. It's got all of your community-based scholarship opportunities. That should be your job, seniors, from here on out through graduation, is just to be checking, applying. Many local businesses, churches, civic charitable organizations, have opportunities out there. Just watch those deadlines. And then employers, so parents, your place of employment, students, if you're working, have place of employment, just check in and see if there's any employer reimbursement, scholarships, anything like that could help your student. All right, I'm gonna skip over this. This is an estimator tool on the federal government's website, but this is really, FAFSA is open. Technically, it is open. I will talk to you about that in a minute. So I would say spend your time on doing the FAFSA. If you are not a senior, you're a junior, you can go to the different colleges' websites, and they should have what's called a net price calculator. So that's kind of like a mini FAFSA, and that would be a tool you could use early on in your planning for estimating purposes. This is this resource here on the federal website is just going to show you federal aid estimating, so it's not going to consider that individual school and what they may come in with aid. So that's why I like the net price calculators too. All right. So if you go out to studentaid.gov today, it's going to look very different than this slide. This presentation was locked in before they updated their page. But studentaid.gov is your website to know, to bookmark. You'll get used to it as well. FAFSA is officially open December 1st. It's been in a beta testing phase, and technically, if you go out today, it is open. So kind of a soft launch. You could go and complete a FAFSA. It's still technically in that beta testing, but we're told December 1st. And you'll see real clearly on the page now, 25-26 FAFSA apply, kind of real specific. But also, if you go out there, you're still going to see the 24-25 school year FAFSA, because that is open, because we're currently in that year for many students. Students who are in college are still completing their FAFSAs this year. So just be really particular when you're going out to do that 25-26 FAFSA, you click on the right year and you don't do a wrong year FAFSA. So any student that is looking to start college in fall of 25 would do the 25-26 FAFSA, okay? So if you're a junior and starting in fall of 26, it'll be the 26-27.
Question?
Yeah.
So if you're considering multiple schools, do you just fill out one FAFSA, or do you got to do 3 schools?
No, thank goodness. You just do one FAFSA. You have up on the online version, the newest, they went through an overhaul last year. This new version is not any different than last year, but you can list up to 20 schools. So if you have more than 20, you could go back and you do a correction, and then you can add in those additional schools. But 20 should do it, yeah. Okay. Let me just make sure. So some other things on this slide. So who should complete it? Any student, regardless of income, who wants to be considered for federal, state, and institutional aid. Okay. And that includes scholarships, grants, loans, and work study. And how long will it take? It takes most people an hour. or less than an hour. It may take you on the longer side your first year, but then every year, as your student is in college, they need to renew a FAFSA for that next school year. And that should get easier. It should pre-populate information. It should take you less time. So, you know, I've heard people say it takes 22 minutes. So it depends on what you have. If you have to maybe do a little more digging of data, but you really don't need a lot of documents to get started on the FAFSA. We'll talk about the things that you need, though. So what you need is a verified studentaid.gov account. I have a slide on that and what that means. Does anybody have a studentaid.gov account that they know of? Maybe you have one if you've been the parent of a current college student or previous college student. So if you've already set one up and you have an account, maybe you as a parent were a student once and had your account, that stays with you. That's tied to your social security number. It is your account for life. You don't need to go out and set up another one. Okay.
When you're setting that up, you set it up under the student's name and social?
So the student will set up their own. Let me see if I have I'm gonna get to my slide. Well, I'll tell you about it right now, and then when we get to the slide, we can go faster through it. But so the student is going to set it up in their name. I have a slide with a link. You can get to it from here too. And I would say set it up now. Set it up before you go down or go in to do your FAFSA, just because it will speed things up, I guess. Then the parent is going to also set up their own. If you have multiple parents biological parents that are not married to each other, then there's some flushing out of which parent is going to be the parent on the FAFSA, and we'll get into that too. So we'll want to figure out which parent is your FAFSA parent, or we call it a contributor, and that parent should set up the account, okay? So FAFSA is going to collect demographic and financial information for both the student and the parent for that dependent student. All that information is going to be used to calculate an SAI, and then that's what the colleges that you're listing, all those 20 colleges, the colleges are going to get that SAI to award financial aid. Okay, FAFSA is available online in English and Spanish. There's a paper form too. I would strongly discourage that. The online's going to be way faster, your way to go. Yeah, we were told December 1st here, so normally though, October 1st is your date for starting the FAFSA. It used to always be October 1st. Last year with the change in how they changed the form and everything, it was greatly delayed, so be thankful you're not a senior last year, because it really delayed things. So we're hoping that with this opening very soon here, you're gonna get information back from your colleges much sooner and be able to start making those decisions. Okay. So online, there's a lot of built-in edits that prevent costly errors. There's skip logic, so you don't have to necessarily answer every question. The system's gonna skip over things. And in most cases, there's no need to manually enter your tax information. We call this FTI, federal tax information. This was part of the change in FAFSA in that it is a direct transfer. The student and parent, when they first begin their FAFSA, need to consent to having their IRS tax information from the 2023 tax year. That's what we're going to be focusing on. That's going to be directly transferred into the FAFSA. So it really cuts down on that manual entry. There may be some unique cases where a parent or student is not eligible for the direct transfer, and they may have to manually enter in the information. Okay, so timely submission. There's a lot of help buttons along the way, so if you're going through and you're just stuck on a question, there should be help resources there. You can usually find a lot of good information there. There is a 1-800 number from the Federal Student Aid that you could always talk for troubleshooting. You're welcome to call me, my team, or anybody at your colleges that you're in those financial aid offices, but I do have our contact information, and we just get random general FAFSA questions, so we're happy to help if you're kind of stuck on something too. Okay, here's the account page. So this ID is staying with the student for really their lifetime, and the parent as well, but it is it's access to certain Department of Ed websites, to that studentaid.gov website. So not only for filling out the FAFSA every year as a college student, but then if you are borrowing federal loans, you'll need this access to get in to like manage your loan information as you're repaying loans, so it does stay with you. Okay, and only the owner should create the ID. So at the bottom, it's quite a long link, but that is a direct link to creating the account. Or when you go in to FAFSA, there's a way that you'll easily see this create account, get started section. Okay, yeah, question.
If you have like previous children, older children,
Yeah.
you did it like maybe 7 years ago.
Yeah.
They'd have one, and maybe they're going back to school, and I haven't touched it since then. Is there going to be an easy way to figure that out?
Retrieve it. There is a retrieval, like any password feature. So there is retrieving. If you get really stuck, then I would say call that 1-800 number, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be able to look behind the scenes and maybe reset an account or help you that way. The colleges, if you call a college and say, I just can't get my ID retrieved, we don't have any access to that. So for that one, you're going to have to call the 1-800. Okay, you'll need your social security number, students, a mobile phone, and an email address to set this up. And I just want to highlight for students to not use their high school email address when you're setting up this federal account, because that's not going to stay with you, 3-4 years down the road. So you'll want something like a Gmail, something that will stay with you. Okay, we're back to this page. So when you go in and you start, either the student or the parent could start the FAFSA. We would encourage the student to start it. They should own it. This is their FAFSA, their document. They should drive. There's more of a flow that way. But the student and the parent could start it. So if the student is starting it, they are going to be asked about their contributors. So parents are called contributors on the FAFSA. Most students filling out a FAFSA from high school are not married and don't have a spouse, which would also be a contributor. But in this case, the student is going to be asked some questions to identify who their contributor is. There's a great tool right now for the 25-26 FAFSA called a Parent Wizard tool. It's kind of its own standalone tool when you go to studentaid.gov. So if you are wondering who would be my parent on the FAFSA, I'd go there, go through that tool. I can help answer some questions too at the end if you're not sure. But traditional, if two parents, biological parents are married and they did their taxes in 2023, married joint, then only one parent needs to create the FSA ID, the student aid account, okay? And that parent's essentially filling it out on kind of behalf of both. Okay, so if biological parents are not married, then it's the parent, the student, the parent who provided more support, more than 50% support the last 12 months, okay? And that parent is the one that should do the FSA ID. If that parent's remarried, then they're providing information for both themselves and their spouse, so step parent, okay? So the student's gonna figure, there's gonna be a parent contributor, and the student's gonna be able to put in the parent information, social security number, email address, parent name, and then that's gonna invite the parent to be, kind of join into FAFSA. So parents, you're gonna get an email to say, join into your student's FAFSA. Okay, so this Future Act direct data exchange is what was new with last year's FAFSA that allows individuals' federal tax returns to be directly transferred in, or income information. Okay, consent is required, so if you're not providing the consent, then your FAFSA won't be processed, you won't be eligible for the aid. There's paper FAFSA out there, so if you are curious, I always print out a paper. This is last year's paper. It's pretty thick. It's nice to be able to see all the questions, because without that skip logic, so you see all the questions. You certainly won't be asked all of these questions, but there's a really helpful notes page at the end of the paper FAFSA. I Googled tonight, there's no, it doesn't appear that the paper 25-26 FAFSA is ready, but you could check back on that if you are interested in getting a paper one. Okay, so as the student gets in and starts doing their part, there's a nice tracker across the top that really shows, there's a lot of pictures in the too. It's really, it's kind of a nice format to see than what it used to be. So if you had a student, 11 years ago, that it looks nicer, I would say. But it's gonna have the student asking identity and contact information. It's gonna ask for their consent, their marital status, their college plans. So like their first year freshman, right? Okay, they're not going to grad school yet. They're not, it's just gonna ask different levels that way. It's gonna ask if they have any personal or unusual circumstances. So this is getting into the dependency piece. This is dependency status. And so if a student answers yes to one of these questions that's presented to them, they may be in independent status. So these are real specific questions. It's more rare, right? So if your student is answering no to all of these, they're gonna move forward inviting a parent to contribute. If they answer yes to something, then parent information would not be required on the FAFSA, and that school may follow up, that school's most likely gonna contact the student to follow up with maybe some documentation, kind of depends on the situation and which response is answered, okay. And if you have questions about dependency status, unusual circumstances afterwards as well, I'm available. Okay. So student is inviting the parent, and then it jumps back to the student providing some more information about demographics, citizenship, parent education, high school information, really straightforward stuff that way. Okay, then in the student's tax return information if they filed taxes in 2023. So if they didn't file taxes, it's going to indicate that. But if the student maybe worked and had some income, they would need to record the income in 2023. Okay, FAFSA is also asking for asset information for the student and parents. So this is cash, checking, savings, investments. And those are the value of those accounts as of the day you guys are sitting down and doing your FAFSA. It's not the value from 2023 as the taxes are, so it's real-time asset information. If you're not sure what an asset is, I do have some slides later on that, and there's also help features, like I said, in the FAFSA that help differentiate what is considered an asset or like an investment, what's not for FAFSA purposes. The fun part is the college selection, listing those colleges. There's a search feature. You can just search your college, but many colleges may provide you with their school code in their admission materials, so you can plug in the code if you have it, but don't worry if you don't have it. And you'll get a chance to review all that information, review it, make sure it's good before then you sign and submit. Okay. On the flip side, the parents getting that email, they're going to be prompted to log in and then complete the parent portion. This is really similar laid out as the student's portion, okay? So it's going to have the parent identity, contact information. It's going to ask for consent, marital status, state of legal residence. Okay. There are some receipt of means-tested federal benefits, SNAP benefits, free reduced lunch, different things that way. So that's something different on the parent side, not on the student side. Tax filing status, family size and number in college. So it is going to be taking family size from your 2023 tax return. It presents you with the number, and you have a chance to change it if that is no longer correct. I do have a slide too on what is considered family size, like who's considered in the household. It has to do with support, providing support, more than 50% of support for dependents or others in your household. The number in college will be asked, but unfortunately that is not being taken into account any longer in the federal formula for SAI. It used to be a factor with EFC back on the previous FAFSA, so. Okay, assets and parent information. Then you're going to review again, and then you can sign, okay? So some other considerations, I think we've talked about a lot of these things. The student or the parent could start the FAFSA. Consent is required. So here's this family size. So for dependent filers, again, most students being dependent with their parent information. The student is one in the house, is considered in the household, obviously. The parent, and then the parent's spouse if married, and the parent's dependent children, even if they live apart from the parent because of like college, if you have other kids in college. And if there's any other people that live with a parent, say there's a grandparent and that parent is providing more than 50% of support for that grandparent. So those are examples of household size. Okay, got some exciting slides on what are assets, what are included. So things like stocks, bonds, CDs, mutual funds, stock options, UTMA accounts, covered all. 529s is always the big one I get asked about. So the 529, I want to just get to my notes, make sure articulate it correctly, because it did change with last year's FAFSA. So if the 529 plan is in the student's name, the student that's going to college, that is going to be considered as a parent asset on the FAFSA. You would put it under the parent side, not the student side. Okay. And if you have multiple children that all have their own 529s in their names, you as a parent only need to report the student that's their FAFSA. It used to be that you'd have to take the value of all of your children's 529s and put it in as your asset. It's just the one student that's doing the FAFSA, okay? If you have two students going off to college, then you'll have to do each of those individually on each student's respective FAFSA, okay? Does that make sense? Yeah, question.
Most retirement accounts are not up there. So is retirement, IRAs, 401ks not included as assets?
Not included. So the value of your home is not included as an asset, car, boat, okay? Value of those things, don't include those. Value of life insurance, value of retirement plans, okay? IRA, pension funds, annuities, okay? So that is one of a big mistake that we see is that you just don't realize, and it's filled out on the FAFSA that's submitted, really large values, say you included your retirement plan, and then you find out later, oh, I included it, I shouldn't have done that. You can make a correction to your FAFSA, but it may cause just a red flag at the school may send you a document to have to follow up on saying, yeah, I really, that was an incorrect response, I really meant it to be this number. I see a question back there, yeah.
If a grandparent has a 529 for your child,
Yeah.
do you take it's in the child's name for the grandparent?
Nope.
Put that or account for that anywhere?
Nope. So if it's in the parent's name, it's a parent asset. If it's in that student who's doing the FAFSA in their name, it's that parent's asset. If it's in a grandparent's name, it's not. Okay. Okay. And studentaid.gov goes way into detail with the different investment stuff too. So, a lot of questions sometimes with that. So FAFSA processing. So finally, you're going to review everything, make sure all of those answers are looking good before you sign submit, and then it's going to go off to the processing. And when it's processed, the student is going to get what's called a FAFSA submission summary, and that's going to be your indication that the student's going to get an email that will have that information. It will have the SAI, some next steps and things. The college that you've indicated on there's also going to get the college version of the FAFSA. And December 1st is a big date, and financially we are all, at the college side, are all anxiously waiting to start pulling in FAFSAs and start our processing. I've already seen some files, so I know that they're coming. We're hoping to be able to pull in. Each college, though, is going to have their own time frame of when they will communicate back to you. So they're going to be having to review your student's FAFSA. They have their awarding process and their timeline. So you'll want to just check in and make sure you kind of understand, timing. So if you hear back from one, but maybe you have to wait a while for another, it makes it hard to compare the apples to apples until you have all of them in hand. But many schools are, I would say, really anxious to get going with this information because we're used to the October 1st date, so we're ready to get back to October. FAFSA submission summary, these are the categories, things that are going to be on there. Okay. We don't need to talk about the paper one. Okay. So this is a great resource, and I checked out on the website today, and they do have a listing of all the dates. This is an opportunity if you want to either go virtually or go in person and get some help doing your FAFSA. Like basically you come in with your student and all your documents, and it's a free event. There's financial aid counselors and professionals that help with it, and you'll sit down, you'll probably be at a computer station and can complete that FAFSA. There are 4 virtual events that are in the month of January, and a whole bunch of different in-person events throughout the state of Wisconsin. I know specifically Waukesha is doing something on January 14th, so you can look and see locations. There's some other ones kind of in this area, so you can look and see what might work for you if you are interested. Okay, the role of the financial aid office. So determining aid eligibility using that federal formula, and also those institutional awarding policies and programs. Financial aid offices do aid packages. You're going to hear it called different things. You might hear a financial aid award, a package, an aid offer, and that's going to show that breakdown of scholarships, grants, loans, and work. Okay, at a very minimum for doing FAFSA, I didn't mention this earlier, is that all students would be offered the federal loan option. So for freshmen, dependent students, it's $5,500 of a federal loan. Could be a combination of subsidized and unsubsidized, could be all unsubsidized. And subsidized means that it's interest-free while the student's in school. But at a minimum, your student would be offered that loan, and they could accept it, they could modify the amount, or they could decline it. So the financial aid office is going to be in touch with your student, and maybe you as parents, but I would say really hone in on the communication with your student, because a lot of offices are emailing the student, directing them into some kind of student portal where they have the access to go and look at their financial aid offer that way. Some schools mail out the information. At Carroll, we do kind of a both approach. We'll send home a paper copy to the house, and then we'll also email the student. So just be on the same page. Have your student be checking their email. Okay. So timeline right now, September through November, completing those admission applications, completing any other documents from the college, discuss any items with your admission counselor. Admission counselors are really a good point of contact right now before we get into that, having those financial aid offers. Applying for scholarships, whether it's at the school or it's here in the community. I see a question in the back, yeah? Yes, it is for the year, yep. And there are additional loan programs on top of that federal direct subsidized unsubsidized program. If after you look at everything, you could certainly talk with your financial aid office, but there's federal Parent Plus loans and private student loans. Those are other loan options kind of after the federal loan. Okay. Completing net price calculators or estimators. I know some colleges between October, December, were doing different estimator tools to help families during this wait time. I'd say now that FAFSA's open, just go for it. But anybody who's not quite a senior, you can do these estimators. It may be helpful. December through May, file the FAFSA, review those financial aid offers then as they start coming in. And when you're reviewing them and asking questions, you'll want to look at that total cost, and I would say look at your direct costs and minus the gift aid, and then what's left from there before the loans start coming in, okay? And just comparing total gift aid and that cost after gift aid, and making decisions then too. So this is kind of very obvious of don't pay a fee to file the FAFSA. The F in FAFSA is for free. Don't pay a fee to apply for scholarships, okay? There's, just watch for scams, things like that. So the special circumstance world, it can get pretty cloudy here. There's a lot of different circumstances, and so this would be a route that's different than the beginning of the FAFSA with the student side, and the students asked, do you have any unusual circumstances? This would be more of contact with, not contact with parent, or maybe a homeless situation. These are different circumstances. These are that FAFSA cannot account for. So you still have to fill out FAFSA, as it's asking, but maybe you've had a circumstance such as this, since the 2023 tax year. Maybe income is different. So that's where you should follow up with your financial aid office. Every school has some kind of process or form for a review for special circumstances, just to see if it'd be something worth your time and effort to. Okay. This just hits on its conditions that can't be documented with FAFSA. Many cases you'll have to write a letter explaining the situation, but this could be a way to help your student get more aid eligibility. Okay. So some follow-up tips. It's about 6:40. We're doing good on time. Thanks for your patience too, but just watching at schools if there's a FAFSA deadline, applying as early as possible. Additional required forms. So I should mention there are some schools that may ask for not only FAFSA, they may ask for another form. The CSS profile comes to mind, so some schools use another form in addition to FAFSA, so you'll just have to check with that school. At Carroll, we don't do that. Make sure you know your beginning costs before the financial aid, your ending costs after that gift aid, comparing your apples to apples, and then looking at how financial aid could change or not change in future years. So as you're getting awards from the college and university, if you're getting a merit scholarship or a grant, something like that, understanding what your requirements are to keep that scholarship. Is that scholarship going to stay the same every year, or is it going to increase as tuition increases? Will the tuition increase? So that's pretty, in most cases, cost increases. You'll want to see what the school's average increase of cost is and how financial aid changes or doesn't change, so you can be aware. But what form are we going to fill out every single year to be considered for aid? Yep, so you'll still have to do that FAFSA every year come October 1st. We're hoping that goes back to that normal date to be considered for those federal, state programs, okay, and potentially institutional. Some schools may require it every year for their institutional funds too. Ask about payment plans. Many schools offer even like an interest-free or a small enrollment fee type payment plan that could help spread out your payments to maybe minimize or avoid student loans or parent loans. And then ask about outside scholarship benefits. So we're stressing to do all this hard work on these outside scholarships and just make sure that you're going to see that benefit. You think you would, but just to make sure that a school's not going to swap out money if you're bringing in money from the outside in a scholarship form that way. Okay, there's your website to bookmark. Green, yep. Here's our team. We have a new director too, and she's not added on here. Her name's Angela Sarney, but you feel free to email any one of us or just contact the financial aid office at Carroll, whether you're considering Carroll or not. We do get general questions, or specific questions. Okay. All right, so any questions at this point? This is really the end of my formal talk. Like I said, I'll stay after and answer questions too, but any for the group?
So typically the deadline, filling out the FAFSA up there, it says December through May, but do it as early as you can.
Yeah, some schools may have a set deadline they want your FAFSA in by. May 1st maybe, for example. Carroll, we don't have a FAFSA deadline. If you qualify based on the FAFSA information, for Pell Grant, for example, you're not going to lose out on aid for the deadline, but some schools may. So, and just with December 1st being open here, just to your advantage, get it in early. You're, December 1st or 2nd, you're not going to miss out on aid that way, but yeah, just so you can start hearing back from colleges. Additional family members in college. And you could certainly follow up with your school's financial aid office, but unfortunately they did take that piece out of the formula. Yeah, it used to be considered as part to kind of help determine that EFC number, and now it's not part of the formula. So.
Sorry, what was your name?
My name's Mary Grace Lindsay. I'm the last one on there, yeah. Great. Oh, one way in the back. Hard to see.
Do you have to submit an application to the school?
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, yes. Yes, so to get a financial aid offer from the school, you need to be an accepted student in a degree-seeking program, but you could be working simultaneously. Okay, so if you've already gotten accepted to the school, list the schools that you are accepted to, but also list those schools that you may be working on applications or even considering wanting to apply to. So if a school gets your FAFSA and you haven't been accepted yet, it's probably just going to kind of sit in a holding tank, if you will, and then the admission information interfaces, and at some point then you would be able to move on to that, that awarding process. So sometimes it depends on the school, and when they're making decisions, you may not know that if you're accepted yet, but you should list them on your FAFSA and be considered. And that being said too, if you do your FAFSA and you submit 5 schools, and then you realize, oh, this school now I'm interested, you can log back into your FAFSA and you go to make a correction, and you can update by adding another school, and then that school will get your information. And once once the cycle is on, we're kind of this December 1st, and it's a pretty quick process. So a student submits their FAFSA, probably within a couple days of processing on the government side. That school is going to be able to download that FAFSA information. It's really then up to the school how long it takes them to communicate back to the student. Sometimes there are documents that may be required for the student or parent to provide to the school that helps kind of finish the FAFSA file, if you will. And that school would reach out to you and let you know if you need to supply some documents. But in other cases, they may have everything they need, and you'll hear back with a financial aid offer. All right. I hope there's some helpful information. I know it's not the most exciting topic, but I know you all can do this, and and you're not alone. And so happy to stay after for any questions. So thank you.